This is episode 2009 of the Vibrant Living series. I'm Kimberly Henrie, and this is Living the Good Life. Today's topic is about acceptance. Not only acceptance, but our response to unexpected circumstances. There's been a bit of that going around lately. Many of us feel knocked around by federal, state, and local executive orders, CDC guidelines, masks, no masks, social distancing, isolation, and so much more. Some of us are doing better than others, but we are all affected in one way or another. We question who has our best interests at heart, and we struggle with safety versus economy and all that entails. Several of our guests in this Vibrant Living series have shared wisdom that can help us navigate. Mindfulness practitioner Brenda Chamberlain in episode 2002 spoke about how a mindfulness practice can help us to respond productively to these circumstances rather than reacting wildly out of fear or anger. Bruce Cryer, Marcia Martin, and Tom Terwilliger all shared important teachings on mindset and how we can move through fear and be empowered in our response. I love Marcia's verbal illustration of breaking free of the prison we created for ourselves. When we can take a pause, practice mindfulness, assess our circumstances, awareness, and understand that how we participate in our circumstances dictates not only our reality, but how we feel about that reality and the amount of joy or self-satisfaction we live with, we become empowered individuals. That doesn't mean we are all going to agree on the guidelines and executive orders. However, if we can shift our mindset to understanding that most all of us are navigating this the best we can, including business owners and leaders of government at all levels, then hopefully we can be more effective in discussing solutions and showing grace for ourselves and each other when the fear does get in the way. In this episode, I want to share a meaningful conversation that I had with a local author last year about this time. Cathy Heyliger created a children's book titled Love Is. When I saw her two grown boys read the book aloud on social media, I had to get to know the woman behind it and learn how it all came about. As I listened to it again today, I realized, though on the surface the subject is different from the coronavirus pandemic we're facing today, the divisiveness and the acceptance message of it all still applies. The uncertainty on how to proceed, how to navigate new information, new reality, is relatable. I hope you can find a nugget or two that speaks to you as I sit down with the author of Love Is, Cathy Heyliger. Our guest today is an author, an early childhood educator, a mom of 3 amazing kids, and the new book is titled Love Is. Please help me welcome my guest today, Cathy Heyliger. Cathy, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
It's great to have a neighbor on the show. You're in the same town, and a lot of the time I'm talking to people, all over the country. So it's kind of nice to be chatting with somebody in my own backyard. Cathy, just to lay a little foundation, a little background, you have been an early childhood educator for how long?
I started teaching in 1986, way back in the 1900s.
Since then, you have had a great career. You've raised, it's 3 kids, right? I want to make sure I got that right.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 boys and a girl, and then the 2 are twins, right?
Yeah.
A boy and a girl?
Yeah. So Kaylee and Webb are the twins, and they just turned 23, and Ben, my oldest, is going to turn 27 on Sunday.
That is amazing. Yeah. I met Webb when I think he was still maybe 16 or 17.
Yeah, he was in high school. And you probably know that he homeschooled. I homeschooled the kids because of Webb, because Webb was born with 1 lung. And so we homeschooled. Their older brother went to school in kindergarten and 1st grade and kept coming home with all the colds and germs. And poor little Webby ended up in the hospital 3 times with pneumonia. And finally I said, something's got to change. We got to do something different. And our really good friend, Jean Hawkins, who was also a homeschool mom in this valley, I think she works at CMC now, she introduced us to the world of homeschooling and helped me get my curriculum going. And we did that. So we thought we were going to just do it till kindergarten, and then ended up with the twins. I did it all the way through. Ben went to high school, but the twins went all the way through.
Did you do that on top of a career? Did you continue working?
No, I was not teaching at the time. So I taught in Boulder for about 9 years, and then I met my husband, had my kids. And I did teach for a little bit when Ben was a baby, but then was a full-time stay-home mom after that.
When did you decide to become an author, and how did this book come about?
Well, I was actually putting together a presentation. So I'm a Montessori teacher, and my training center is in Boulder. And every year in the fall and sometimes in the spring, twice a year, they offer conferences for teachers to get their 15 hours of professional development hours in. And so I have spoken at conferences in the past. And since I've been back to work, I decided I would want to do that again. And I have a curriculum that I developed during my career for peace education for peace. And it's in a nutshell, it's just about self-love and loving yourself. And the more we love ourselves, the more we can love one another. And it's a way I help the kids get along with each other and, socially interact in the classroom in a peaceful way by keeping their heart light bright and by saying things to their friends that would keep their heart light bright. And it's called a heart light curriculum.
I love that. The heart light bright. You can just see what that is. I mean, that's great. What a way to communicate.
Yeah, it's kind of self-explanatory. I just haven't visualized that idea. And I have a heart candle that I bring in. But anyway, the curriculum was developed when I was teaching before I had my children. And I continued to use it with the kids at home when I homeschooled them. And then I used it again when I went back to work. And I started going back to the conferences and stuff. And I went to a conference on that particular subject. And I walked away feeling like, you know what? I could have done that so much more concrete. I need to do this. I want to start doing this again. So I put together this curriculum and I had this ending presentation, a little slideshow that I would put together. And I was trying to sync it to music. And I was watching it over and over and over again, trying to get the music to the little slideshow. And as you know, I'm not very good at technology, so it took me a really long time. And I kept watching it over and over and over again. And finally I said, gosh, this would make a great children's book. I can't believe I never thought of it. And my husband was sitting there reading the newspaper and he said, hey, he goes, I just read about a little publishing company up in Carbondale, Light of the Moon. Why don't you make an appointment with them? So I did. I took my presentation up there to them and I said, I want to turn this into a children's book. And she said, that's great. It's a great idea. I love it. I'd love to help you.
And so the book is born. And Carbondale's just right up the road from Glenwood Springs where you live.
Yep.
And so great that you have a local publisher.
I know.
That was able to help you get this idea off the ground and running. And so the content of the book, I'll just summarize it somewhat. Like I said, it's a very brief, simple concept about love. Love is in every kind of family is really the gist of it. And in the book, you picture a typical heterosexual family. You picture cross-cultural family. You picture single moms, single dads, and then you picture two moms, two dads. And then you also address some spiritual differences in families. So why this is such a simple concept, but it can also be very controversial. So what's the foundation? What brought this kind of a subject to the forefront?
First of all, I realized in homeschooling my kids and my sons coming out to me that I had neglected the idea that you can't have a very bright heart light if you aren't living as your true self. And so I thought that if I just taught them about culture and taught them about taking care of the earth and talk about taking care of themselves and eating healthy and exercising and being in nature, that they would get all the things that the kids in my classroom were getting. And then I realized through raising them that I had missed something. So I thought it was really important. I used to go to the library and there is books out there about my two mommies and my two daddies. And I didn't think to pick them up because my kids don't have two mommies or two daddies. And it just didn't seem like something I should have done. And looking back, I wish so bad I would have. And so I was born out of me just wanting to help young children understand that all of those ways of loving each other are okay, or whoever you are is okay. And also being an educator for peace, I feel like most of the wars in the world revolve around how we pray and people arguing about how you pray. And if you don't pray their way, you don't fit in. And I wish that it wasn't like that. I think that if we're going to have there's ever such a thing as world peace, we have to love each other and we have to let each other be who we are.
I think that's such a beautiful way to respond to the situation. I just want to reiterate, you mentioned that your boys came out to you and at different times, I'm assuming?
Yeah, at different times.
And you had mentioned earlier in our conversation when we were talking before we jumped on here that at least one of them was as young as 5 years old.
He didn't tell us when he was 5, but he knew when he was 5. We didn't understand or know that, but he told us after he came out that he had known since he was 5. There was a boy at school when he went to kindergarten. His name was Quinn, and he was in love with Quinn. And he talked about Quinn a lot. And he's a 5-year-old boy. So, of course, he was his friend. And I loved that he loved Quinn. You know, of course you love Quinn. It never occurred to me that he, loved him in a different way or, had a crush on him like any other person would have a crush on in a heterosexual way. And I think that kindergarten is an age when the kids start kind of chasing each other around and the girls are chasing the boys and the boys are chasing the girls. And Ben started having those feelings even that young. And I think that's pretty common. But he thought his were wrong and he felt really wrong and felt like there was something wrong with him. And he spent a lot of time feeling like there was something wrong with him because it wasn't until 7 years later when we were at the library and he was in the young adult section picking out books and I was with the twins in the kids section picking out books. And I came back and Ben quickly shoved a book back onto the shelf without the binder showing. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time talking about what the name of it is. Anyway, so you couldn't see the title. You couldn't see the title to the book. And I thought, that seems odd. I'm going to go over and pick that up. So I did. And it was a book called Boy Meets Boy. And I went over to Ben and I said, Ben, honey, do you want to read this book? And he said, yeah, I do, Mom. And I said, well, of course you can read that book. You don't have to hide that from me. And he took the book home and he read it. And he came upstairs and said, Mom, I'm gay. I said, oh, thank goodness. You finally told us because we were, by that time we were starting to feel like there was something definitely going on and that he probably was. And we were hoping that he would tell us, but we didn't know how to approach it. And he was so upset and so full of kind of self-loathing at the time that he was just terrified and felt so awful about himself. So we were super grateful that he read the book and super grateful that he came out to us and it ended up being great. And then Webb's story is a little different. He was pretty young at the time. So Ben would have been, I think, 12. Webb was 8. And he was dancing a lot at the time. He's a dancer. He loves to dance. And he was at a dance studio and he was doing competitive dance. He was really good and got to be on the competitive team. And he had a particular little partner that was really adorable. Her name is Brooke and she's so cute. And he danced with her a lot. And so they were paired up to do all these team dances and couples dances. And they won lots of awards at the competitions and stuff, and everyone teased Webb that Brooke was his girlfriend. Well, he went along with that. And, we thought, well, okay. And then later on, he did tell us probably a couple years later, when he was 10 maybe, that he thought that he was gay. And he seemed very, kind of attached to this little dance partner of his. And we were just kind of blown away. We were like, wow, I can't believe we have 2 gay sons. So we kind of didn't embrace it as quickly. And we said to him, maybe it's just because your brother is, and you're kind of, emulating that whole idea and let's think about it for a while. And we kind of were trying to talk him out of it, which was, I have no idea what we were thinking. It was horrible. And both of us just felt sick to our stomachs. We were like, what were we thinking? So about 2 weeks later, we took him, we were on a walk and we said, Webb, we handled that so badly. It is okay if you are gay and it's fine. And we love you and we want you to be gay.
And your daughter?
And, she's very straight. She loves her brother. She teases that she grew up with sisters because they're so.
Oh, how fun. How fun.
Yeah.
So I know there's got to be parents and just people listening who would not responded so well for a lot, for various reasons and many of them very understandable. As a society and, for centuries, there's been a lot of taboo and just misunderstanding or conflict in understanding. So how do you attribute your acceptance when it could have easily been so different?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you love your kids unconditionally. That's the rule. That's the rule. You have children and you bring them into the world and your job is to love them unconditionally, no matter who they are, how they learn. Kids have all kinds of challenges in their life. And if you're not right there next to them taking that ride and being with them every second of the way and trying to give them everything you can to help support them and love them, then why have them? That's our job, to unconditionally love your children. And the reason I wrote the book is because I wish so bad I would have had a book like that. Because for Ben, I think if I would have read my book to Ben when he was 5, there would have been this little, explosion in his head where he would have went, oh, it's okay for me to love Quinn. And of course it is. He would have known then that it was okay. And he wouldn't have spent 7 years hating himself and thinking he was a freak and thinking there was something wrong with him. And that's a long time. And it affected him. It affected who he is. It affected his life. It's taken a long time for him to embrace who he is. And I still think he struggles sometimes with the whole idea of being gay. And it's not easy to be gay, even though it's so much more accepted than it was. And thanks to people like Ellen DeGeneres and people like that, of course, it's much more accepted. But it's still not easy. There's so many kids my son's age, Ben, my oldest, whose parents just said, get out. We don't want you here. We tried to start a GSA group. This was when we were in Castle Rock, and Ben was at Douglas County High School, and we started a GSA group, which is a gay straight alliance, or I think they're using a different term now. There was an article in Mountain Parent, and there's 2 ways to look at that. But anyway, so we tried to start a group, and I was kind of on my own starting this group, and I had lots of kids come. And so our first session was just me and several of these children who had come out to their parents. And the 10 kids that were there, 6 of them were not living at home anymore. They had been abandoned by their parents. And I was not equipped to know what to say to these kids. I was just sitting there crying. So I was no help whatsoever. I just had no idea how to respond to these kids. And I couldn't believe their parents would be so cold and so cruel. And it all had to do with the whole biblical world. This isn't biblically correct or biblically okay. And we can't accept you anymore. And I just was so upset about it that I realized I was not equipped to be the person to run that group. So we looked for other people, and it did continue. We brought in other people, and they did help and were able to continue the group. So I was really proud that we ended up starting it. And it was a little on and off, but I think now it's pretty strong and it's there and it's going full bore. So I was happy that Ben and I were one of the first ones that started.
I'm a strong believer in life is what you make it. So we all get lemons, right? We all get stuff that just seems insurmountable. And apparently your family has this situation, or I don't even know how to call it. It's just life, but it's not typical to what our society is calling normal. And so you could make the choice to be a victim. The boys, Ben and Webb. So what do you do to help them come to a place where they can respond from a strong standpoint and enjoy and embrace life versus becoming the victim and being hurt and distraught over their circumstances?
Well, in the beginning, it was really hard because Ben wanted to go to high school. Once he figured out that he was gay, it was a whole new world for him, and he wanted to be in it. And so he went off to Douglas County High School with white jeans on and pink Abercrombie shirts on and just told the whole world, I'm gay. And it was brutal. We begged him. Tone it down just a little bit. We don't want you to get hurt. And it was really, really hard. Every day was stressful because I felt like someone was going to hurt him, either physically or mentally. And there was some incidences where, football players would walk by and kind of push themselves up against their locker when they passed him, like he was going to give them germs or something, that he was catching to become gay or something like that. So he had a few incidences like that. He had someone in his math class that kind of bullied him. And it was funny that I called the school and I talked to the principal, and I'd never, ever called the school before. It was my first time to call the school. And I mentioned that he was having trouble with this person in math, and if there was a possibility that he could talk to the math teacher and maybe possibly move Ben away from this person so that math wasn't so, upsetting for him. And Ben's great at math. He's super smart. He was a level up from where he should have been. And I was super proud of him. And I really wanted math to be a positive experience for him. So I called this principal and I told him, and he called me a helicopter parent and that I should stay out of it. So I was really sad and upset about that. I did go in and talk to the math teacher, and she was great. She happened to be a woman, and she loved Ben, and she took care of it for me. And then from then on, though, things seemed to get easier a little bit. Colorado, I think in general, is pretty conservative, and it's not the super easiest place to come out gay, especially 10 years ago. But now I think it's way better. And I think they're totally accepted. Just a few years later, after Ben went to high school, Webb did go for a little while. He decided he wanted to go too. And he was there for 6 months and ended up being, student of the month, and everyone loved him. And he just had a great time, and no one treated him like that. So just even a short few years later, but I remind him, I said, I think Ben had a lot to do with that. He was really brave to go to school and be out and proud as he was. And he was in the choir, and Ben was a great singer. And so he did have a lot of positive experiences in high school. The choir was one of them. And Miss Gilbert, his choir teacher, just loved and embraced him, and he just had a beautiful voice. And so that was really positive. But I think he kind of laid the groundwork. Him and the other kids that were brave enough to come out, there was a handful of them, laid the groundwork for Webb when he got there. And it was better for Webb, a lot better. And now, today, I don't think they struggle with it at all. It's funny. I don't know. I guess you call Ben's age a millennial. They don't care about anything. They don't care about color. They don't care if you're gay or straight. They don't care. They're super chill. That group of people is totally laid back. They are very accepting of each other. And I love that. I love that about millennials. They're very whatever. I really like that.
It sounds like your boys picked a great mom. So if you could, write the story of your book, what impact would you like to see it have as it begins to live its own life and get out into the world?
Yeah, I just would hope that parents would embrace the idea of presenting the ideas in the book to their young child. I hope that I have opportunities like this to tell people that kids know when they're young. Ben's not the only one who knew when he was 5. A lot of the children that we've talked to, or a lot of the young adults that we know who are gay, knew when they were very young. And being a Montessorian and being a teacher, I know that kids are super aware of who they are and how they fit in. And if we don't tell them when they're really young, then they spend time worrying and being sad. And there's so many young children's suicides out there. And I bet you there's a handful of them, or more of a handful of them, that are kids like Ben that were really thought there was something wrong with them, and they never were able to embrace it and end up taking their lives. And I want us to start earlier. I want my book to have an impact for parents to start earlier, presenting the idea that it's okay to be whoever you are. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be transgender. It's okay. And I think we need to start earlier. I'm really proud of a GSA group at Carbondale Middle School. They just started a GSA there. And that's young. Those kids are like maybe 5th grade. Let our children know that there's a lot of ways to be in the world, and all of them are okay.
That's a great statement. There's a lot of ways to be in the world, and they're all okay. Cathy, thank you so much for spending some time and sharing your story, and hopefully inspiring some folks to get out there and be more inclusive and just share their journey. And thank you for being brave and accepting. Life isn't so much about what's given to you, but about what you make of it. And it seems to me that you have made a great family and a great life.
Thank you so much.
I am so glad I had the opportunity to share this conversation with you today, and grateful to Cathy for sharing her and her family's story. Where are you sitting with this? How would you have responded? I invite you to share your thoughts with us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community. We'd love to connect with you there. If you'd like to add Cathy's book to your collection or gift it to a child you know, the title again is Love Is. We'll include a link in the show notes. Next week, we'll have a deeper discussion on fear and provide some resources as we talk with acclaimed filmmaker and author Bill Bennett. Prior to the pandemic, Bill had been working on his latest film called Facing Fear. He traveled to various countries around the world interviewing scientists, physicians, psychiatrists and psychologists, spiritualists and psychics, combat veterans and victims of violence and abuse, and others who had faced real fear and survived. He interviewed some prominent names including Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Foster Gamble, James Van Praagh, Paul Selig, and many more. He says some of the most powerful interviews, though, were with people you've never heard of. When the pandemic hit, determined to be in service, Bill pivoted and began creating a resource on fear for the global community. We'll talk with Bill about facing fear and more next week. I'm so looking forward to it. Until then, thank you for joining us. I'm Kimberly Henrie, and this is Living the Good Life.